We have reached the penultimate book in the monster series, and let me tell you, I kind of had a love-hate relationship with this one. We open with the guy from the end of the last book at a bar, and Tenma's there too. And remember in the last video I said I kind of like this guy. But for some reason, I really liked the guy in those two chapters. Just his character in general. Yeah, he's kind of making me question that. Dude, take it easy. Anyway, he goes and takes Ava to another party and ends up back in the bar with Tenma. But Tenma's not messing around this time. But then when Martin says that at the party she ended up pointing out a pretty blonde man, they both realize that she's officially outlived her usefulness, and he ends up running out to go save her. And then he ends up running into the boss, and in the process realizes that he's the one that's supposed to kill her. Now, instead of killing her, he ultimately is going to let her go, and he's going to try and send her back to Tenma, and he knows doing all of this really is just going to put a target on his back as well as her back, so now they're both basically going to be killed. And he also ends up talking to some guy, and we get some backstory as to him and his childhood and his upbringing with his mom, and then a little flashback to his girlfriend and how she died, which is why he went to prison. All that stuff. Long story short, he gets into a gunfight, gets himself shot up, and ends up in the back of a car with Tenma stitching him up. After all that, Tenma goes to see Ava, and this whole section with Martin basically added up to he was a kind of nice guy, and Ava ended up kind of liking him, even though she was really mean to him. And it was kind of the last straw in a long list of things that's happened to her in her life that's made her decide to change and be a better person now. Because she realizes she's a terrible person and she wants to start doing the right thing. And I don't think I care. I mean, I really genuinely think by the way that this is written that I'm supposed to feel sympathy for her at this point in the story. And I know that she's, had a rough life and she's been through rough times and bad things have happened to her. She's a broken person and she's really been through a lot. But I mean, if you really think about it, she started this whole thing as a terrible person. So it's not like there's much of a redemption arc that we're going to have. There's not much to redeem here, is there? I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm just the asshole. Anyway, she goes and buys a gun and says she's going to kill the devil. So now she's out to kill Johan. I mean, we got Tenma going to kill Johan, and we got Nina going to kill Johan. Now we got Ava going to kill Johan. And now that I think about it, now that I'm saying all of this, we didn't see the BKA man anywhere in this volume. Like, he just wasn't there. So maybe by the time next volume comes around, he'll be going to kill the Johan man too. And to be quite honest, it would be awesome if she was the one that actually killed Johan. Like, everybody else, you got a cop, you got Nina, you got Tenma, you got all these people with these genuine motivations, and then you just got Ava, and she's the one that gets to deliver the killing blow, and she gets to be the hero of the whole story. You know what? I'm advocating for that right now. If it is not Ava in the end of this story that kills Johan, I'm going to be very disappointed. That is the ultimate goal for this story. Right now, I claim it. That is the ultimate prediction. That's going to happen. Wait and see. Actually, to be honest, if you want a real prediction, I think that she might ultimately, if she pursues this further, like ultimately goes up towards Johan, she might actually end up dying. She might not make it to the end of the story. I think that would be a natural progression for her character. Kind of start out as a real garbage person, have this, slow path towards the light side, have a mini redemption arc, kind of become a good person, go after the bad guy, and ultimately end up just not making it through to the end. That would be that would officially turn me around on her whole character arc. Anyway, where was I at? Anyway, now we get a whole section with Nina running around trying to get her memories back. She will ultimately end up taking Dieter back to that old man dude, and he will hook her up with a hypnotist. This comes down to her having a flash of that memory where she comes into the room and meets herself and welcomes herself home. That erupts into her trying to choke the hypnotist. After that, she says, "Now I remember everything." Awesome! I've been waiting for this for books. What happened? Oh no, you're not going to tell me? Okay. Anyway, at this point, Tenma gets hit by a car. And instead of getting picked up by the cops or a hospital or anything like that, he gets picked up by a Turkish man from that neighborhood that burned down a few books ago. And that sounds convenient, I know, but it's par for the course. It's what happens in a monster book. Convenient things like that happen. But wait! Because we're about to turn this shit up to 11. I know I said it was a Turkish man that had ties to Tenma and that neighborhood, but what if I told you that he's also out to kill Chapek? And what if I told you that Chapek is actually one of the guys that was responsible for creating Johan and Nina? And what if I told you that the only reason that Chapek was in this country in the first place was because this guy brought him in here? And now he's off to kill Chapek because he feels responsible for all the bad things that Chapek's done because he was the one who brought him here. So, not only does he have ties to the neighborhood, and to Tenma, and to Chapek, and to Johan, but he also feels responsible for Chapek. Therefore, his story exactly mirrors that of Tenma's story, and this is all wrapped up in a nice little bow of them all living in a house of refugees, all living together because they've all lost family members, and they're just trying to get back to their homes. So it's essentially typical sappy tale of a side story that would be typical in Monster, but at the same time, he also somehow has ties to literally every single character in every single way, and his story mirrors Tenma's story, because why the fuck not? I'm not gonna lie, this section of the story was a little bit much for me. Like, I keep talking about convenience for convenience sake and contrivance and all these things, and it's just like, okay, I can deal with it. But come on, we have gotten to, like, this just, like I said, it just dialed this shit straight to 11, and sometimes you can have a character enter a story, and not every character has to have some really intricate ties to the greater web, all these interconnecting pieces that all fit together, this vast web of connections to every possible conceivable character in the story. It doesn't have to be that way. You're allowed to just have a character pop up and go away sometimes. This just took the convenience to a whole nother level, and I didn't much appreciate it, if I'm being really honest. But at the end of the day, he tries to kill Chapek, and he dies. So there's that. At this point, Baby is lured in by a stripper, and then he's killed. And then when Baby's killed, it triggers Chapek to realize something's up and he might not be safe. And he kind of rushes around, and at this point, he runs in to Johan. Johan then confronts him face to face and says, "Bonaparte is still alive, isn't he?" Now back with Ava, she goes and tries to get information out of that one guy that met Johan that one time. This backfires on her, and she almost gets her ass killed, but Tenma shows up and saves her just in the nick of time, just for her to go use the payphone, and then while she's using the payphone, Tenma gets the information that he needs about Johan and runs away, leaving her behind. He leaves this nice message for Ava when he leaves her, though, like, "I'm sorry I ruined your life." And in all fairness, Tenma, I don't think you didn't ruin Ava's life. You literally had nothing to do with the ruination of Ava's life. She did that shit to herself. Your conscience is clear. There you go. The weight has been lifted. I lifted it for you. You're welcome. Anyway, back to Ava. If she stops here, she might actually survive this story, but I still have that feeling that if she continues and pushes forward, she might not make it to the end. Now, Nina shows up at Chapek's, and Chapek's still alive after Johan left. And we find out that Johan left him alive because he wanted Nina to kill him, which she doesn't. But he does take Nina to where Johan is at, and on the way there, he says, "Have you ever heard the story of how you were born?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm listening. Your father was a soldier, and your mother was a college graduate who studied genetic engineering." And I'm just immediately, my brain goes crazy. I'm like, that's amazing. So you're telling me that her mom was a genetic engineer and that her mom was doing some really batshit crazy, fucked up genetic experiments on herself, and she somehow manufactured these ultimate 2 killer children in this weird experiment? Like, this is completely nuts. That's nope. Come to find out, it's her dad was involved in some weird eugenics program with the government, and the fact that the mom's a genetic engineer, irrelevant. That's weird. Why would you bring that up? Why would you put that in the story if it's not relevant? Like, what was even the point of mentioning it? I mean, maybe they were just trying to illustrate, she has some crazy degree in some ridiculously complicated thing, so she's really smart. He's a soldier. She's really smart. They go together to make demon babies. I don't know. But why then would it be genetic engineering? I don't know. Anyway, when she gets pregnant, they're separated, they're not allowed to see each other, and she's held captive until the babies are born, and then the babies are taken away. Anyway, like I said, Chapek takes Nina to go see Johann, and on the way there, he tells her that Bonaparte is still alive. And then when she goes to confront Johann, he says, "Once, when I ran away from the Rose Manor, I got home, and you greeted me. Now I greet you. Welcome home." Here we go. Now we have some issues because this isn't the memory. He just remembered coming home to her as she says, "Welcome home," which is the memory that she constantly has of coming home to herself, and she welcomes herself home. So now we have the same memory being remembered by both kids in the exact same way, but they both remember themselves as the same party in the incident. Not different. They both remember themselves as the kid at the door being welcomed home. This doesn't work. This doesn't line up. So now my interest is just peaked again. See, this is the roller coaster ride that this volume has been for me. And we've been fed this memory over and over and over again this whole time. Hell, we just saw it when she tried to kill the hypnotist. And we get both of the versions of her, and the one in the door always looks innocent, and the one in the room that's welcoming home holding that book always looks creepy as fuck. So which one's really Johann and which one's really Nina? What is the scene even trying to tell us? Is she confused? Is it trying to say that she's been the messed up one the whole time? Was she the one who went off to the experiments? Although how could that be? Because he just said that he remembers coming home from the reading groups to meet her, but she remembers coming home. Are they trying to imply that they're the same person? Because that doesn't work either, because there were times in the beginning of the book where they were both seen together, like in the hospital, so they can't be the same person. I could see how somehow maybe Nina's supposed to be the ultimately evil one, and it's not really Johann. I'm not sure. Why do they have the same memory? And why do they both remember being the same person in the memory? Like I said, I'm back to having my interest peaked. And when Johann says, "I've seen the end," Nina says, "What have you ever seen? I'll tell you a really terrifying story." The end. Fuck you, manga. If that isn't the most awful cliffhanger ending I've had so far, period. I don't know what is. Eat it. You just go away. And, and I'm going to be like eager when I get to the next book, and I'm going to open it up and I'm going to expect to get an explanation of what that really terrible thing is. And I bet you $1 million it's buried somewhere near the back of that next book. I'll open it up and we'll somehow be with Tenma all of a sudden, or some other character, or maybe the BKA man, but we're not going to get it. We're not going to get the resolution to that statement at the beginning of the next book. I just don't trust Urasawa to give it to me. He's a real son of a bitch. Anyway, that got out of hand, didn't it? But anyway, speaking of the mystery, I just absolutely love it. And like I said, my interest is piqued, and I am more invested in the mystery of this story than I have been so far in the story. It has been slowly drip feeding you information and facts and building up to this ending very, very successfully. And it has got me really extremely hyped for what we're going to get in the next book, or the resolution to this story. I'm really chomping at the bit to get it. In that regard, this has been a very successful volume. At the same time, we got by far the most egregious display of convenient character placement I have seen in this manga so far, and that has been, there's been a lot of those characters placed into the story as we've gone along, so for this to be the worst example of them has to be pretty bad. So that's what I meant at the beginning when I said I had a real love-hate relationship with this particular volume, especially in some of the middle sections of the book, where it started to feel like we're padding for time, drawing this out just for the sake of pushing the ending back, just to draw the tension out longer, needlessly so, and unjustifiably so. It didn't feel earned, it didn't feel necessary, and it just felt bloated and overlong in parts. So he's been doing this a lot. He's been stretching this book out, he's been stretching the story out, really to get as much out of it as he possibly could, but so far as he's done it, at the end, it always felt justified. This is the first time I can say it didn't, some of the bloat didn't feel justified, and it was a bummer. And so, long story short, at the end of the day, I'm actually going to dial this book back to just a little bit to a 7.5. It's not quite as great as the past couple ones were. I mean, it's still good, but it's not, yeah, we're going down to a 7.5 for this volume. But I'm still so hyped for the next one, and I'm so hyped for the ending. I just want it to be good. Please, God, stick the landing. That's all I ask. Anyway, everybody, as always, the link for my Patreon's in the description below. The link for my Discord's in the description below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.